I'm joined today by Mike Whitlow, Managing Director of ECR Minerals, who announced Friday that they've been signed an exclusivity agreement for the potential sale of their non-core gold assets in Victoria, which incorporates a 75 million tax loss. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, obviously, the news quite significant. Could you just give us an overview of the announcement and the rationale behind it?
Yeah, obviously we've had a fair bit of interest in these accumulated tax losses. There's been discussed for quite some time. Apologies for turning up to your show today, not looking half as snappy as you do, Darren. But yeah, look,
That's all right.
we knew that there were assets within this business when we joined the company. So 13 months ago, people said to me, are you sure you're doing the right thing? And we said, look, there's a number of assets that are hidden within this business or have gone forgotten. And some of those assets were properties. Some of the assets were rigs, excavators that we could convert into cash that were no longer of any value to the business in its current format. And of course, there were accumulated tax losses valued somewhere to the region of about $75 million. So we took a view that we would have a look at them, see what we could do. We took some independent took an independent opinion from a tax advisor in Australia who we spent quite a bit of time talking with. We then went to find a suitable company to partner with, to collaborate with, to help us in this disposal journey. And eventually, after quite a long time, we managed to, engage with Argonaut, and we found a route and a pathway through to that disposal. And subsequently, things have kind of moved at a hell of a pace. We started off with two or three people in the data room signing confidentiality agreements. Then a fourth came quickly a few days after that, and then given the sort of language and the initial figures being bandied about, Nick and I felt that one party was really sort of talking the right sort of language, and we agreed that we would accelerate and move forward into exclusivity. Now, whilst that paperwork was out being signed by the counterparty, yet another company came in and signed a confidentiality agreement with Argonaut. So yeah, we find ourselves in a very fortunate position where we have multiple interested parties in these non-core assets, and we must refer to it as non-core because it's not just tax losses that we're disposing of here. There are some tenements and assets that we've not done anything with. They're not of any great interest to us. And for the ease of a transaction, when dealing with tax, which can be quite sensitive, people always want to see that this isn't just an empty tax avoidance vehicle, which it isn't. So that's a bit of an update on the rationale behind where we are and a bit of background for you, Darren.
Cool. Okay. In terms of the actual size of the potential consideration, I know you probably don't have a hard number or anything, but is there, you've got some sort of estimate on what that could look like? And I appreciate you're obviously in discussions at the moment, so you can't come up with any
No,
hard
no.
numbers.
Look, I think what I can say is, Argonaut gave a view that the tax losses were worth somewhere between 18 and $22 million. That's out in the public domain. That was something that we published over summer. And their view was that we would achieve, in their opinion, up to and around about 50% of that. So 9 to $11 million is where they estimated us to be. What I can say is the number that these guys that we've signed exclusivity with have been talking about is significant, and it's probably a bit better than we expected to open up with. Nick and I are shareholders, and you know how important capital is in this market. So
Yeah.
$1 million today versus $1 million 2 or 3 years ago is far more valuable, and we're talking multiples of that. So yeah, it's a material transaction. It's ongoing. I'm probably not at liberty to talk any more detail about that, but I think
Yeah.
we're as shareholders, this is the right kind of language that's being spoken,
But
and
it's,
just
yeah.
the pace in which this has been progressing is encouraging.
I mean, it's significant, right? Because I mean, some companies at the moment, you know this as well as I do, are struggling to raise funds in the market, as you say. I don't know what your market cap is right now. Is it circa 10 million or something?
That's
Um,
about six,
to raise what?
six, six, six,
Oh,
six and a half.
six. Right. Okay. So the number you're talking about is significant for 6 million market cap company. So, yeah. Okay. Well, that's we'll obviously wait to see. You've got, I think, the other parties got till end to the 29th of November. Is that right to negotiate terms with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, we had to put a timeline in that we felt was achievable, but not disenfranchising us from any additional external interest as well.
Right.
You never really know how these things are going to develop once you sign exclusivity, but what we've seen is these guys are keen. You know, we've been communicating all weekend, or there's certainly been communication over the weekend, and I think one of the guys is actually up in Cairns on vacation as well. So, you know, the fact that he's away on holiday with his family and he's still, you know, sort of as keen as custard, it says everything to us. Nick's been travelling as well and landed back in Perth Saturday evening. So, given people are on the road, on holidays, traveling for business, this communication has not stopped or slowed down. So, yeah, it's really encouraging. We think that timeline would give us a good framework to work from, looking at how things are developing and how quickly they're developing. We're probably going to find out sooner rather than later. But yeah, no, it's really positive. And as I say, you know, some people have said to me, well, does that mean that you won't, you know, you can't do anything else? And you know, Darren, it's one of these things is we have to be impartial. We can't take a view that we like one more than another. So those that have, you know, conducted due diligence, signed confidentiality, and want to progress an engagement, relationship, discussion, negotiation, whatever phrase
Mm.
he sees fit, we're going to pick the best candidate, and we believe we've done that for the time being. It doesn't prevent us from accepting any additional uh, you know, offers that may be made in an unsolicited manner. So to be clear, we're not closing the door on anybody else. What we're saying is right now, based on where we are, these guys have ticked all of the boxes. And yeah, there's no funny business of, you know, a structure that's going to have a lot of loose ends that needs to be pulled together. This was a initial discussion was based around a figure that we liked and, you know, a structure that works. And what I mean by that is it's cash.
Yeah. Which is
Now, now that
yeah.
remains to be seen where we get with it. I know you want to know how much, and can it be tomorrow, as do many of the investors. That takes a little bit of working out, and you know we'll be making an update as soon as we possibly can on that. But yeah, as far as box ticking goes, this is about as good as it can get, I would say.
Okay. Well, that's great. Um, Question then: should the deal come to fruition, what would you use those very valuable funds for? I'm guessing potentially to further your core assets that you've got. And I know a few of them. I've kept up with some of the RNSs. You've got your diamond drilling at Tamba or Tambo in Victoria. Um, you've had high grade results at Lulworth, and you've obviously had some very high recovery rates at Blue Mountain. I think 91%, which is pretty phenomenal, and it's near surface gold. So, are those all those what I just talked about there? Are they all going to remain core assets?
Yeah, so again, one of the questions that kind of cropped up when we first made this announcement regarding the disposal of non-core is there was a small disclaimer which our advisors, you know, rightly suggested should be entered into the RNS. And what that says is if you dispose of your assets and it happens to be all of them, you know, you could well become a cash shell or a vehicle. And at that point, you would be duty bound under AIM rule to complete a transaction within a fixed time period. I mean, we have three subsidiaries in ECR. So if we disposed of one subsidiary with the non-core assets in and we moved out some of the other ones, we would still have two subsidiaries in Australia and therefore we wouldn't cease to be a non-operational business. So therefore, that sort of clause then wouldn't be triggered. But in the event that a proposal was made that incorporated a total sort of takeout of all your assets, and I suppose everybody's got a price on the head, right? If these guys said, well, actually, we don't just want the losses, we want everything. And there's, 100 million quid. Who are we to argue? So I guess at that point, you have to have certain disclaimers in place. It caused a little bit of confusion. And I just wanted to raise that point that, we have in Lux Exploration all of our Queensland assets are held there. It doesn't stop us mixing and matching some of the assets from Victoria in with the Lux portfolio. So just as a bit of reassurance, I don't see any real threat. But as I say, if somebody wanted to make a knock it out the park offer for everything, who would we be to not consider that? To answer your question, what would we use the assets for? I think the work that we've got, I mean, Lulworth is just shy of 1,000 square kilometres. We've actually got a licence under application at Condaparinga, which is another 125 square kilometres. And then you've got somewhere between 700 kilometres down in Victoria. So the total size of the portfolio of assets that we've got in both Queensland and Victoria is about 1,800 square kilometres. So we're talking a big area. What we think we've found in the first 2 seasons at Lulworth is we think we're now vectoring in on the source of gold. We've got subsurface, we've done some trenching, we've successfully identified, particularly at Gorge Creek West, that the pathfinder elements that you would see around Ravenswood and Charters Towers in the silver lead, galena, is all consistent with positive gold results. And we're able to see that, visibly. We're able to identify it using the XRF gun. So we're confident that what we're able to identify by using these methods and then looking at the consistency with results that follow that we're definitely sort of vectoring in and finding the source of the gold here. So we're making massive steps forward on what is a huge area up in the Lulworth Range. With Blue Mountain, it's slightly different because this is an alluvial play. The gold's near surface. We've been able to sort of, between 2 and 4 meters of trenching, we're hitting hard rock or pay dirt, and we've successfully been able to process that and again, clearly illustrate and demonstrate the ease in doing so and the results that come out as a consequence. Now, we did the enhanced gold recovery report, or we initiated it, and Gecko, who, if you go and look at Gecko, they work for BHP Billiton. I mean, they're working for the big guys, that the reputable, accredited, independent party, and they showed that our gold recovery, just using gravity separation, was 91%. What that means is it's environmentally friendly. It also means that a lot of the gold that the old timers were mining was lost, and it's because it's not visible. It's like a fine, very fine, flowery gold that only really shows itself by using, an enhanced method of extraction. So even sort of, washing into a sluice box and then getting your concentrate, it wasn't showing itself. I would say probably 15 to 20% of the gold was visible in your hand, and the rest of it, if you didn't know it was there, it could quite easily get lost. So what that tells us is that not only can we get quite a significant amount of gold from this asset, much more, 5-6 times more than the old timers, and this is including, when we calculated our figures here, when we've banded around those statements of 5 and 6 times better, we've not cherry picked our results. I mean, we washed a lot of dirt there, and we trenched out quite a bit of barren ground because this was a fact finding mission as to where the best areas were, and we incorporated that within our material that we've submitted for the enhanced gold recovery. So if you were able to target the pay rich area, there's a good suggestion to say we can do actually significantly better than we've reported. The problem is, I suppose, Darren, it's a nice problem to have, is that Gecko report was so good. It almost seemed crazy for us to trying to speculate on how much better it could be, because the Gecko report was actually exceptional and much better than we anticipated. So in theory, what we're saying is we've got a good independent report to work from. We've got a lot of positive technicals here. We've got a very sort of easy near-term alluvial play that we can get into production, start generating revenue and moving the business forward. How well we can do with it, is it going to be quite well or very well, remains to be seen. But it's really really positive. So I know there's a lot of attention on the non-core disposal, and it's where cash is going to be generated from. But we're hoping that after being incubated for, I think this company's been listed for not nearly 2 decades. So I think at this point it's probably right of us to be able to generate some revenue,
Well, you seem to
and
have
start
done.
producing.
Yeah, you seem to have done quite, probably more in the last, I don't know, 3 months than the company seemed to do in the last 3 years. So, and I know it's been your remit from the start to not meander along, and it's to focus the funds in the right place. You've said that from the outset. But I'm going to ask you a question then. What's your long-term vision? Do you see ECR becoming a gold producer, i.e., as you just said, in terms of the fact that you might be able to get some sort of smaller operation up and running and then organically grow it? Or is it a case of proving up these assets, making good discoveries, and then selling those assets? Or is it a combination of both? Or you don't rule anything out, you could do either.
Yeah, look, I think we're open to all considerations. I know that during, I'd say probably 6 months into this job, all of the sort of fizz went out of both myself and Nick joining the board, and then it was just like the hard, laborious, hours being put in, and people would say, "You're trying to keep too many plates spinning at once. You need to focus your energy on one asset." And I always maintained that what you need in this market is you need a little bit of luck, but you need a lot of hard work. And we wanted to give ourselves 4 or 5 catalysts within this business, where we could swing the bat and potentially go for a home run. And if we'd have focused our energy on one project, whatever that might have been, we may not be in quite as a fortunate position. Now, what that's meant is we've had to be careful with spending cash. We've taken shares as remuneration since joining the company. It's quite unusual, certainly for this length of time, and therefore it makes us more cognizant of the decisions that we make and how that will affect shareholders. Given our blood, sweat, and tears has gone into accumulating stock in this business. So it looked like we've done a lot more than many others. I think perhaps it's a case of all of those pieces of the jigsaw are starting to come together now, Darren. I think there was a point even when I looked at it and said, well, we've got the outside in, we've got a good framework. It seems like we've got a really strong strategy. And then you've probably got 6, 7 months into it, and there's a lot of criticism out there, and you think, what, have I got it wrong and have they got it right? But we stuck to our guns, and I think in the last 3 months, you're right, it really does feel like things are starting to come together. And with strengthen the technical team, with the addition of Mike Parker joining, and Mike's a really humble guy. You'll see media and footage going out with Mike as well. I've known him for quite some time. I've had an ongoing relationship. He's a smashing guy. He was really, really a big part of the developmental stage of First Quantum. And for your viewers who go out there and look at First Quantum and the size of that business during that developmental period, Mike was there for 21 years. He had 3,000 people working for him and under him in the DRC, and he's the only geologist that I know that's had 2 world-class discoveries in the one country. It's quite a statement, I know that, but it's a fact.
Was he existing at ECR when you joined, or have you brought?
No. He's literally. We just announced him in the last couple of weeks. He agreed to come on board. I've met and spoke with Mike since and taken his counsel since joining the company. I know there's going to be lots of people who go, well, is Mike Whitlow licking his finger, throwing it in the air, and seeing which way the wind blows to make some of these decisions. I've got a good network of people around me. I've got a project that I've been overseeing with assets in Canada and Cyprus. It's a private business. I've known Mike for many years, and many other geologists, and I've made sure I've taken counsel where required and appropriate to make and help me make the right decisions for this business. So, Mike got to a point where he'd got some bandwidth, and he said, "Look, Mike, I like what you're doing. We can work well together. Why don't we see if there's a way to advance?" And it was like music to my ears. So, Mike has agreed to come on as a technical consultant. We announced that a few weeks ago. We're not taking anything away from our head geologist. The relationship between those two is fantastic. We're already seeing the fruits of his labours quickly and benefit of having him around. So yeah, Mike's job is to design drilling programs to help us bring assets into production. It's what he did for 21 years with the major. It's what he's been doing successfully for other companies, and it's what we're hoping he'll help us and assist us with at ECR.
So you mentioned, earlier about putting funds into more than one project. You've got the wheels, or if you like, the cogs turning on all those projects at the moment. Do you think there's going to be a time soon where you need to say, right, we need to start channeling pretty much most of our resource to this? Have you got to that point yet? Is there one that's secretly sitting there looking like that could be the one? Or are you
Well,
not at that point, really?
I think when we again, I'm going to refer to what we know, and I think we can improve these numbers. But I'm going to talk about what has been put in the public domain and that advisors are happy with. So I don't want to kind of push the boundaries too far. But what I will say is, additional to caveat this statement is, I think we can improve significantly on this. But if you've got up to 100,000 ounces of gold at Blue Mountain, which is what was suggested by Blue Kebble, who we procured the asset from, then that equates to, $250 million worth of gold in situ. Now, if we
With
can
what's
improve the
happening with gold at the
enhancement,
moment, yeah.
and you look at what's going on at the moment,
Yeah.
so whether it's considered a huge asset or not right now, whether we can improve on it considerably or not, I've stated I think we can. What we know is there's a considerable amount of gold in situ. A considerable amount of gold was missed by the old timers using traditional wash plant method. That's been demonstrated clearly from the independent report. So I think there's a huge scope and opportunity at Blue Mountain. It's not going to be super expensive for us to get that asset into production. We've got, again, one of the big problems is landowners working with you. We've got a landowner there. I mean, it's like we've fallen so lucky because he's already assisted Adam and the team when they were up there. They've got some heavy plant. It's an old cattle farmer, and they've got a lot of heavy, sort of big, D9 type Volvo excavators in there. And he said, he's actually worked with our guys and said, they've got a great relationship. And he said, look, if there's more of this to come, I'm on board. I'm not getting any younger. This is lighter work for me than, what he was doing beforehand. And of course, he'll expect to be remunerated for it fairly and compensated. But if there's a huge amount of gold on his property, he doesn't know how to get to it, and we do. So let's work together and let's get at it. And we've got that support. We're looking at non-invasive mining methods. So we're using gravity separation. We're not looking at chemical enhancement. We're looking at using, a very simple method to be able to enhance our recovery considerably, which is representative and reflective of the environment in Queensland, which is a green state. They've suggested they'll get to, zero carbon footprint by 2030, I think was a thing I'd read a little while ago. So they're not going to have us come, bounding through the door with some crazy extraction techniques, and we're cognizant of it. Again, as I say, we're planning and building this operation around it. So of course, it's really, really encouraging. At the same time, because I've got such an ambitious nature, I don't want to turn me back on what we've got at Lulworth and actually Conda Paringa neighbours the Hodgkinson Goldfield. If we look at what we've been able to achieve in a short period of time at Blue Mountain and demonstrate through independent validation, I then start to question, well, the Hodgkinson Goldfield was prolific, 200 years ago. What is going on up there that hasn't already happened? And given the opportunity around the Conda region, it would be crazy of us to turn our back on it. Now, collaboration, joint venture is always going to be considered. And if a disposal's there, if people are making a big fuss of it, as we've seen with, the government and academic institutions now wanting to support us in the geological survey, etc. It tells us that our assets are decent, and it tells us that there's a huge amount of interest growing around this region. So, we'll consider everything that's on the table, but I don't think I'll turn me back on anything unless I'm absolutely certain I can't get anything more from it. But look, we've got a couple of good lines to be following up on. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, cool. Well, good luck with those projects, and we'll obviously look out for news coming from the drilling program and the other things going on at the other projects. And obviously, towards the end of the month, hopefully there'll be some news, or early next, on how the negotiations are
I
going
mean,
with
look,
the.
Darren, it could be a lot. It could be a
Yeah.
lot sooner than that as well. It really could
Oh,
be.
okay. Yeah.
So we put a line in the sand, and we're prepared to step either side of it if it's meaningful and we're moving in the right direction. I wouldn't again. I just wouldn't I wouldn't bet against it being any sooner either. Just on the basis of the discussions over the weekend. But who knows? We can't give any guarantees, and we won't give any guarantees. But I think it would be also unfair to say I think it's probably going to be in another 3 or 4 weeks' time when it could be in another 3 or 4 hours. But let's
Yeah.
wait and see.
Well, you did say you were on it over the weekend, so okay. Well, thanks for joining
Yeah,
us, Mike, and I'm sure
my
you'll
pleasure.
be back to give us another update when we have some more news.
Yes, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure, Darren, and thanks to you and your viewers,
Okay.
and I look forward to speaking soon.
Yeah. Cheers. Okay. Thanks, Mike.